show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now.
Welcome, everybody, to the 25th edition of TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com. I am Brian Coyle. I am joined alongside Sean Stanley. We are recording on a Tuesday night, March 8th, and all I can say are two words: surprise, mother truckers. And I can't say the actual words said by Nate Diaz, but that's what you'll hear on TV over and over again, because we had upsets at UFC 196. Again. Sean, this sport, man.
I agree with you in a way, but also I say this. Are they really upsets?
That is the great question to ask, and we'll delve into that. We have to cover Conor McGregor's loss to Nate Diaz. We have to cover Holly Holm's loss to Miesha Tate. We have to cover all of the mainstream attention, by the way, that this has gotten. Some good, some not so good, including the hottest take I've ever read about anything. And I've seen, segments of television where people talk about what they don't even know what they're talking about. People have gone all over the map talking about Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz and Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey, and this is great for the UFC. But before we get on to that, including someone currently in the UFC joining Dancing with the Stars, this is a weird. I mean, Georges St-Pierre shows up at 196, doesn't say a word to anybody. All right, lots of stuff to go over. UFC 200 is just a couple months away, and the UFC 196 could have changed the face of that card forever. And let's jump right into it. Conor McGregor choked out second round of the main event. Your immediate reaction was what, Sean?
I think I tweeted it. I just said OMG. Not that I didn't think it was going to happen or anything like that. I just the way it happened. I mean, once he took control of that fight, it was just McGregor, once he got nailed with that one punch, he went into panic. I mean, he said it himself. He went into panic mode, and he did a shot. I guess that was a shot. He kind of dove at his ankles, and that was it. I mean, you could tell in his face, in the second round when he was, the first round he was kind of, going back and forth, and he was landing his shots, picking them. And I think with all the damage he gave him, when Diaz came out and was not really fazed by it, you kind of saw his face. And then when Diaz started sticking him back, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't like it normally is. And you can say it's the weight, you can say it's, whatever. I mean, I don't believe, I'm sure everybody's read everything that's been tweeted out now by everybody who now wants to fight McGregor because now his fairy tale's over and everything else. But I just think that he thought that, as every fighter does, I think they think they're invincible. And I think once he saw that, wait a minute, this isn't going the way I thought it would go, and Diaz, being the bulldog that he is, was just coming at him. I think it changed his whole get up, and as they said, he panicked, and next thing you know, I mean, Diaz is great on the ground, and that was where McGregor thought as bad as, he got so bad for him that he thought he would be better off taking Diaz to the ground than standing up with him. So
if you went back and listened to last week's podcast, we talked about the ways that Nate Diaz would be able to win. And it talked about getting him tired, making Conor use his energy, getting it to the ground, choking him out. These are all things that happened. Yes. Conor, we talked about him being able to manage the getting bigger and still not sacrificing any of that precision and that timing. I don't know what fight some people were watching. He looked completely off at that weight. He didn't.
I think the first minute he looked good, and then you started seeing it get to him as that round went on. He wasn't as active. He wasn't as bouncy. He was trying to be as bouncy, but he just wasn't. It wasn't. He had the kind of the smile, I guess you could say, because the fight was going his way, I guess. But yeah, he was nowhere near the McGregor. I mean, not that you see a lot of McGregor in the last fight, anyways. It was only 13 seconds, but
yeah.
But I mean, as you've seen him in other fights, he wasn't, the crisp punching. I don't even know. Did he even throw a kick? Well, he threw a couple, like when they were kicking each other's the thighs, the front kicks, and things like that, I guess. But other than that, I don't think he really threw a lot.
Well, this was the whole thing. I saw this take going around a couple times, and it was really, really intelligent way to put this. What a mantra for Conor McGregor is: precision beats power, timing beats speed. He didn't have his precision. He didn't have his timing. Diaz was all over it. Conor was throwing those spinning head kicks in the second round, the two that missed like cleanly.
Yeah.
And they looked slower. They didn't Conor was different. And he made a mistake. He did what Chris Weidman did against Luke Rockhold. He shot for a takedown, whatever the hell that was. I think Conor was just woozy and trying to slow everything down.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. I think he said he panicked. I think for the first time he was like, I'm in panic mode, and he did what he normally gets done on him, kind of just
he was out of gas.
And he paid
Nate
for
Diaz,
it. Yeah.
And he talked about it himself, and he said we found out he was on a yacht in Mexico when he got the call, and all this stuff. And Diaz, I mean, people were making a lot of deals about being a triathlete, no, he's being in shape. I mean, he does, in Conor's words, look like the fattest skinny guy out there, but he would he attacked this fight in every way correctly. I mean, he wasn't thrown off at all. You could tell by when Conor got in. There was no problem with Diaz's head. He was just ready to go. He was feeling out that first round. You're right. He did get cut, but as everyone mentioned, there's so much scar tissue on on Nate Diaz's face.
But that just makes him hungrier. I mean, really, when you taste your blood, for them, that's a normal fight. I don't think I've ever seen a fight where they haven't been bloodied up or anything.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like their mantra. They're not worried about that. And as you're saying, a lot of people are like, oh, Conor's kind of showing them up at the things. And I just wonder, with the Diaz brothers, they don't really get thrown off by much. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I just think that it was his attitude. Like, hey, look, you say what you want to say. I'm just going to say something back to you because I don't care. And I think that's kind of the attitude that, where you've seen all these other people kind of go in and try to match wits with McGregor and try to be and the one-upsmanship. And you just, he just really didn't care. I mean, he didn't. And now that you look back at it, it's like, no, maybe McGregor didn't have those wins at the press conference like we thought. It's just more Diaz didn't care. He was just going to say something just because you said something.
You have to give a lot of props to, both fighters taking that fight on the 12 days notice. As much as everyone's giving props to Diaz, you have to give props to Conor on that point. And I mentioned this the night after the fight. Everyone was talking about how Conor had trained, and I was mentioning this too. Conor trains to make himself better, not for an opponent. Which everyone was like, it's a brilliant idea. It's a good idea. He's fighting at a healthy weight. He doesn't have to cut. All those ideas completely destroyed in one night because he was clearly not prepared for what Diaz. He was fighting a rangier, taller opponent, which he did not know how to deal with. You could tell, even if he did connect. And we'll talk about the fact that when he throws those fists and it hits Diaz's face, it's going to drop a guy at 145. It's not going to drop a guy at 170. And that's unfortunate. It's just the way it is. And he's not as fast, and he may have been a little bit stronger, but Conor this was a bad matchup. Longer, tougher, better on the ground, and Diaz didn't just try to get into a street fight with him. He was smart. He was measured. He was completely in the zone. He took that first round to feel him out because he knew, he's like, he can punch me all he wants in the face. I'm not going to go down. So let's go to the second round and see what happens. And Conor was in trouble in the end of the first when he was grabbing the cage, when he was getting pulled in for a possible guillotine. And mean, we'll talk about the facade of McGregor being broken, but Nate Diaz did a terrific job, and Conor had a bad night. He was inefficient with the way he threw his punches, with threw his kicks, the way he attacked Nate Diaz. It was a dumb move. I mean, stupidity runs rampant in the UFC sometimes when it comes to the octagon. We've seen it with even the best fighters.
Well, and also I think, I think a lot of people don't give the Diaz's the credit that they deserve as fighters too, because of their nonchalant attitude, I guess, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, those guys go to war, man, and hey, look, you might not like the way they are, or but what's funny is a lot of people don't like the Diaz.
They don't like
for
Conor.
the same reasons McGregor got. Well, but people have flocked to Conor, whereas they don't like it when the Diaz's were doing it. You know, maybe it's a new era, a new time, but it's not much
Connor's
difference.
more eloquent. That's what it is.
Maybe that's what it is.
That's pretty much what. And the Diaz would talk a bunch of crap, and I was gonna say something else, but after being bleeped,
they're uncensored. That's like when he started talking on pay-per-view, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. It's uncensored Diaz, and then he did nothing. I mean, he said the first part of it, but then after that, it was weak. I'm like, wait a minute.
Also, Diaz came off. Both fighters came off great, I think, following the fight, because Diaz. Yeah. I mean, he came off as pretty likable when he said, "Come here, Joseph," like telling Joe Rogan just to come over here. He did the thing, like that makes you likable. And Diaz, people and he talked about it. And Dana White's mentioned it. Like, we don't know if we'll see the Diaz's for a while because he'll just
he was like, with that payday, he just said he's buying a yacht.
He just made $500,000 a show. We don't know how much bonus. I mean, the bonuses plus sponsorships and all
that's
that
true,
kind of stuff.
He had to get.
And Conor came off as a humble fighter. He lost. He said he had a bad night. Yeah. He made several mistakes. He has to go on and make it better. But everyone's now throwing stones from glass houses, especially from Brazil and Rafael dos Anjos. Who, remember, I've said this on this podcast. I would have picked RDA to beat Conor because I just think that's the way the matchup was. And Aldo, of all people, dropping certain things. And we linked to the tweet we have 2 articles up right now on the Full Mount. What's next for McGregor, Holm, and what's next for Tate and Diaz. And Aldo's like, all of a sudden he wants to fight him at UFC 200. And Aldo was given the chance to fight him now, and he did not take the opportunity. Which, like, if you're going to call the guy out after a loss, everyone's going to call out Conor after a loss. But no one, how many people would have called him out after a win? Like, it just comes off as very petty, and.
Oh, not only that, but he also beat you and don't get me wrong. I think it was, I don't think the fight ever got underway, and I think he caught him. But again, he caught you in 13 seconds, and now you're going to sit here and call him out and all this stuff after a loss. I don't get that part of it. I understand now everybody wants, because look, McGregor, it's still going to be a good payday for somebody. So why not, throw your name in there real quick and try to make you the next opponent. I can understand that, but to me, it's just like you said, it's petty. How many people now are, jumping on it and being like, oh, fairy tales over, and all this. And
it's just insane. And like I mentioned, I saw hot takes in USA Today of all places saying that Conor McGregor was never a great fighter. And the guy has been mocked all over. I'm not going to give the link to it because it's just abysmal to read personally. It's just not good writing. And obviously it's not a good take, but it's just not good writing. And it was made fun of very conveniently by BloodyElbow.com on SB Nation, which was great. And people are coming out and saying, "Oh, Conor was never a thing anyway." He's made everybody better. People were tuning in to McGregor and Diaz, and they just wanted to see Conor McGregor, and they realized I had a couple buddies over for that pay-per-view, and they asked, "Oh, who else is fighting on the card?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, Holly Holm's fighting on the card." And they're like, "Wait, Holly Holm, the girl who knocked out Ronda Rousey?" If people you got more and more interest. The amount of interest in Miesha Tate has skyrocketed since her win. Conor has done nothing but positive things for the UFC.
I mean, look what it's going to do for Nate Diaz. Think about what it's going to do for Nate Diaz that he's the one that beat him.
Yeah.
I mean, there was talk at the end that look, he's already in. Like it makes sense for him to fight Lawler next. I mean, that's one victory over a guy that's not even in that weight class, or you know what I mean. I mean, and now he's already in line for a title shot at. It's just that's what
literally,
he does.
As we've been talking about this is a half hour ago. We're recording again on Tuesday night. Firas Zahabi tweeting out, Nate Diaz, let me see what you can do. I know Georges St-Pierre was very impressed by your performance, and so was I. So Nate Diaz could theoretically fight Georges St-Pierre at UFC 200. That could be a thing. It seems like GSP is going to be at 200, and he seems like he's going to be fighting at it because he just doesn't show up to Vegas for 196 with.
Yeah, there's a method
Ariel
behind
Helwani and Brett
madness.
Okamoto and great reporters from around the MMA world have kind of been like, they talked to him, he wasn't leaning anyway, like he wasn't giving us anything, and Dana White's like said they're in negotiations with GSP, but it has to be the fight that he wants, whether it's a fight with Robbie Lawler, which I think would be freaking fantastic at welterweight, whether it's a fight with Nate Diaz. Like, Diaz showed himself off being like, listen, I can trade with anybody, and he's a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Diaz all of a sudden becomes a very intriguing prospect across the board, both at welterweight and at lightweight. So, like, he walks around at 190, and he goes from 170 or 155 or whatever. So this is really, like, it opens up a whole cavalcade of options for Nate Diaz. And for Conor, he can go down, defend his featherweight championship, or fight Cowboy Cerrone at lightweight, or do another fun fight, and add more validity in the critic's eyes to be like, listen, I'm not just here to like run through all the divisions and try to claim as many belts and get out. Like, I am a fantastic fighter, and I will prove it to you by either defeating Jose Aldo or Frankie Edgar, likely opponents at UFC 200. So it's not all bad for Conor. It's not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of said it in my article that I wrote up there earlier. Is like, look, Diaz kind of might have slowed down the hype train behind, Conor McGregor, but with the way that everything rolled out at UFC 196, I think it's opened up a lot more possibilities for fights by the matchmakers because of what happened. And the fallout from 196 is better than if Holm retained it and
because
McGregor
when
won.
you look at this, if Holm retained her title, appears Ronda Rousey wasn't in a hurry to come back, and we maybe would have gotten that fight in October and November. All of a sudden, Dana White is talking to Ronda Rousey and texting her she didn't watch the fight, and she heard that Misha won.
No, she was at a wrestling show, actually.
There you go. So like she heard Misha Tate won. Oh, gotta go back to work. Like, is she gonna come back and fight at 200 now that it's Misha Tate instead? And I know you kind of lose the shine off of the Holm Rousey matchup, particularly because it could have been the biggest fight. I mean, the rematch, but in the short term, Conor McGregor loses momentum. Holly Holm loses momentum. In the long term, the great thing about this sport is, I mean, if people become flavor of the month, flavor of the year, you build up superstardom a little bit, and they get knocked off their perch. But even if they do get knocked off their perch, there's another person to replace them. We're getting deeper and deeper with the crop of talent that we have in the UFC.
You are, and then also it sets up for, not that the rematch right after the fight. You're not going to get the Holly Holm Misha Tate rematch. You're going to get Misha Tate Ronda Rousey. Now, and then you start thinking about it. Rousey wins. Now, who's the one person that's beat her? So you have another storyline already set in stone for Holly Holm to get the next fight then. So it just keeps feeding itself, and it's a perfect storm when you start looking at some of these fights. I mean, You know, I mean, just as you start looking at what's up in it for Diaz and the way you're going, as you said, with all the crop of talent, I mean, when you look at some of that talent on that card, I mean, there were some good fights and some good guys coming up, and it's going to make some intriguing matchups. And I don't think UFC is going to have a tough time putting together some big fights coming up.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And just to kind of close the book on the fight itself, Conor is at a point where he's not ready for 170. And optically, is it going to look kind of weird if he fights RDA and has lost to the number 5 lightweight in the world? Yeah. So he'll go down to featherweight. I don't know if he'll be at 200. Some signs point to yes. Sometimes, I mean, originally, like after seeing that, there was no medical suspension for him. So, like, cutting that much weight, fighting 4 times in a year, it's a lot. But is Conor McGregor going to do it? It looks more likely than not. And who's the fight? Is it Aldo or is it Frankie Edgar? That's the bigger question. It seems to me a lot of people are pointing towards Aldo being a bigger matchup. I don't really agree with that.
I totally disagree with that.
And because of the fact that, I mean, he did beat him in 13 seconds. You don't know what Aldo's pulled out on you once already. And yes, of course, he was champion for 10 years. And is there anybody more deserving of, I've heard the whole argument, is there any more deserving of an immediate rematch with Jose Aldo? I get it. Is he the bigger fight? I don't think so. I think Frankie Edgar's the bigger fight. Frankie's been patiently waiting for a shot. He's on a 5-fight winning streak.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's earned his fight.
Decimated Mendez.
I know it sounds kind of cliche. I mean, he beat Mendez to set up to be the next in line after there. And now what? After you get knocked down 13 seconds, you go to Instagram totally to try to – I mean, he's trying to sell the fight to people. I don't think Edgar needs to really sell the fight. I think it would –
And it's funny you mention that because Edgar has been trying to sell this fight for months, and it's gotten annoying. And I mean, I think it's been more his manager than him. I mean, he did a great job on the pre-fight show on Fox Sports 1, and there was nobody happier than Frankie after that result, because with Diaz knocking the big fish back into the little pond, just theoretically speaking, because featherweight's lighter, not that it's not like the fighters aren't a big deal. McGregor to me is more interesting. Do I want to see McGregor fight Aldo again? I guess. If Aldo beats McGregor, you've got a trilogy. Conor beats Aldo again, you're completely torpedoing Aldo. I mean, Aldo loses twice to McGregor. When's the next time he's going to get a title shot? You know, it's like...
Not only that, but then what do you do with Edgar? I mean, you sit here and you tell him, okay, you write Mendez kind of set up a title eliminator. Then you move McGregor up, you know, and it was really for Edgar, it's the best thing that could happen to him was that he lost, because if he would have won, as we talked about before, I don't think he goes back to 145.
I don't think he ever goes back to 145.
No.
And, of course, we've seen Frankie Edgar against Jose Aldo, and he lost. So the argument there is Jose Aldo's beaten Frankie Edgar. So I don't think they can go wrong with either fight, but to me, I think Frankie's the fresher, more fun matchup in that point. And we'll talk about it more as it gets closer. I don't think it's a guarantee that Conor fights at 200. Unless he's ready to cut all that weight and jump immediately back in, which, I mean, we've seen Holly Holm wants to fight like tomorrow. She came out and said that. So, like, some fighters, they need to take some time off. Some don't. Conor talked about Aldo in that revered press conference that they had out in California at the UFC gym. He was cracking jokes and we saw a bunch of great stuff, but he talked about the fact that Aldo was knocked unconscious. He should take a year to recover, and everyone was thought it was a joke, but Conor was being completely serious. And Conor's body's been through a lot. He's been through a lot of fights. And all the training, I heard this today, Kenny Florian brought it up on the Anakin Florian pod. He talked about the fact that we saw Conor McGregor in those embeddeds doing like heavy gymnastics and like heavy muscle training the week of the fight, which to me seemed like when you're looking back, it's like, man, he probably was gassed from still like being training that week of the, like, because he's doing heavy muscle intensive stuff. So maybe it's a good thing for Conor to get lighter, where his reach is that more devastating, where his like precision and timing is so much better because he's lighter and he can throw punches faster. We talked about the fact that like when you literally have less mass on your arms, like you can throw those punches faster. And maybe Conor is built to be at 145 and maybe 155, but he's certainly not ready for 170.
You know that, but also from the angles you can throw. When you're bigger, you're more telegraphing the punches, and I think maybe that's part of the problem that he had the other night is that you could just see the punches were coming.
For sure. And for Diaz, I mean, you kind of covered this fact. Where does he go? Like, he's the kind of guy you just make fun fights with, I think, at this point, because it doesn't seem like he cares about the belt. I mean,
no, he said, I want the biggest fight. That's all he wants. All he wants now is the biggest fight in paydays. If that's titles, then that's titles.
So is that Lawler? Is it GSP?
I think if they offer him, I mean, that's going to be interesting.
Is it RDA?
You go GSP. I mean,
he lost to RDA. But, I mean, that...
Yeah, but I think he goes Lawler. I think you go Lawler and him.
But that's crazy because welterweight's so crowded. And, like, do you do Diaz Condit? Like...
See, I think if you're going to use him in that weight class, you do what you were going to do with Conor. I think if you move him up for a title fight. I don't think you move him up to fight, you know, like a title eliminator fight or something like that. I think if you're going to move him up right now and you want to jump on this buzz around him, he fights the champion, and then you go from there.
I mean, because
not saying that Condit and him wouldn't be a great fight, don't get me wrong. But I think if you're going to build on this buzz that he's created now with what he did, I think, and what would be better than him and Lawler, honestly, going after
I cannot feel worse. There's two people that feel worse. Like I can't feel more bad for. And this all shake up with the welterweight, lightweight, and featherweight divisions. Tyron Woodley, who has not been able to do anything since Hendricks bowed out of their fight, and he's been kind of sitting there like, am I really not going to get this welterweight shot because of Nate Diaz or GSP and Frankie Edgar? Because these whole three divisions have been like kind of held up, so we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's why I think the UFC kind of made I don't want to say mistake because again they're making money hand over fist. But with the fighters, you're putting them in limbo by doing all these fights, by moving a champion up 2 weight, or at the time it was 1 weight class, and then it ends up being at 170. But when you move these guys up, you put everybody else on hold almost, because if you're that fighter that's ranked number one and you're told you're getting the next fight, do you wait to get the next fight, or do you throw all that on the line to fight after you've already did everything you could to finally get to that spot? And that's a delicate situation for some of these fighters, because all it takes is one punch, one slip up, and now you went from everything you had to
like what happens if Khabib Nurmagomedov beats Tony Ferguson? Like, is Nate Diaz usurping them for a title shot at lightweight? If Tony Ferguson erases Khabib's undefeated record, which that's one of my most anticipated fights of this unstoppable kind of promo. Then we'll get into like favorite crews being announced, Wonderboy Thompson and Roy McDonald in a nasty fight in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool combinations, and I think the fighters would feel a lot better if they were getting paid a lot more per fight. And yeah, I mean, you can go down the Reebok rabbit hole as much as you want, but this was Diaz 25th UFC fight or something along those lines. So he's been in a good spot.
He definitely
got paid. And like Dana White said, we don't know the next time we'll see Nate Diaz, but The next time we will, he'll be in a big fight after that one. And, I mean, we can talk about the main event for days, but let's move on to Miesha Tate and Holly Holm, because this was the fight of the night for me. This was an incredible performance by Miesha Tate, and is basically pulling off that Hail Mary shot, hitting a home run in the ninth inning.
Yeah, but why was it your fight of the night? Why did you feel that was your fight of the night?
Because of the way, like, there was so much tension built up, and the way Tate dominated that second round too. This was like Holly Holm facing adversity for the first time, and that ending was almost story. Like, you couldn't write that ending, the way that fight was, given the fact that Tate knew she was down on the scorecards. Even if she had won the round, it probably would have been a draw, because all the three judges had it 10-8 in the second for Miesha Tate. And Holly Holm was basically trying to run out the clock, and she couldn't hit Tate. She was very tactical moving around. She goes for that takedown at the perfect time, nails it. Holm tries to flip her in a last-ditch effort. Tate holds on, locks in that choke. Holm doesn't even tap, which, I mean, I saw people criticizing Conor for not for tapping, which was insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough guy, the keyboard tough guy.
The keyboard warriors. This isn't.
I mean, look, dude, if you're getting the air, you can't breathe, and you're.
This isn't Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, okay?
Exactly.
This is not how this works.
I mean,
Holm passing out was dangerous. I mean, it was incredibly gutsy. It was
past it. I mean, like, you saw the official. As soon as she saw him go limp, it didn't even take a second. Like, he was a quarter of a second. As soon as he saw
her arms go limp,
do the punches to the air, and as soon as it went limp, he was already hitting. So I mean, kudos to her for holding on. But
it's dangerous.
The people that are
criticizing Conor for it.
Criticizing Conor and for tapping and being like, oh, well, Holly Holm was a true champion. Really? You're going to use that as, like, that's what a champion is? When I mean, and some of the people that were saying this stuff are the people that got knocked out in 13 seconds.
It's absolutely crazy. But, I mean,
that's my only issue with it. I mean, look, I'm far from being a fighter, and I'd probably get in there and get choked out in 15 seconds. But to sit there and to for a guy that beats you quickly, and you to come back and criticize like that, using another loss as your thing, I don't get that whole thing. It
was just absolutely insane, and the fact that Tate hit a clutch jumper at the buzzer. She had a walk off home like that. This is the kind of thing that you can equate it to, and she finally gets the title. And we talked about this on the previous pod. Would Holly Holm turn out to be a one-hit wonder? Was she this devastating force to not be reckoned with? Or was...
I don't think that she...
was she like somebody who progressed, who had a perfect night against Rousey, and was she more regressed to the fighter that we saw before the Rousey fight, or was she the fighter in the Rousey fight? And we probably said she was somewhere in the middle. And guess what? She's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, look, we said it here... Miesha Tate is kind of like her kryptonite. I mean, Miesha Tate said she was her kryptonite, but she has a wrestling, she can wrestle. And that's the thing you saw. Like, when she wanted to, and Holm, to her credit, for the other rounds, kept her at distance with her jabs or boxing, which was what we said, she's got to do to keep the fight standing and everything else to have a good chance. And she did that until that final, in the second round, of course, when that was, but then that final round, man, she just
completely,
I don't know, I won't say gassed or whatever, but Miesha Tate let it all hang out. Miesha Tate was basically, look, it's all or nothing. I'm either going to make it and do what I got to do, or she's going to stuff me and win this fight. But I'm not going to sit here and just be okay with not trying to do my best to win this belt. And she went out there.
Holly Holm fought like a boxer in that fight. She fought like Floyd Mayweather. She pointed her way in the third and fourth rounds. That's what she did. And I mean, there was no issue with that. If she would have won those 4 rounds and lost the second because she was sprawling and scrambling and got completely destroyed in the second, then Holly Holm would have retained her belt, and we'd be talking about Rousey Holm as the next thing. But Tate was able to shoot, time it perfectly, and she nailed it. And now she could call hers.
Yeah, and she held on when Holm. Sometimes I was wondering, and looking back on it, is if Holm could have. And again, this is just mainly if she could have stayed in that position for where she, like Tate was on her back, but she was fighting it and she was bent over and did the roll. I don't think she would have been able to sink the choke in as deep as she did if she could have done it. Again, I understand there was like 90 seconds left on the clock when it happened and things like that, but you wonder if she herself kind of got, panicked and was like, okay, now, I wonder what was going through her mind right there to where like she's like, okay, I'm gonna flip it right now, because that really helped Tate sink it in deeper.
See, to me, I thought the last ditch effort to kind of flip her, Tate had her back, and I thought it was only a matter of time whether she should have flipped her, dropped her on her back almost, like, and pulled guard. Like, I didn't have a problem with Holm trying to escape by any means necessary,
No, I don't have a problem with it, but I just wonder if she would have thought about it a little bit longer, or if she wasn't in that panic mode, if she would have tried to say, okay, let me try to sit here for another 15, 20 seconds and fight this, and then I'll try something else instead of doing that flip that quickly. Because, 20 seconds later, the fight's over. She's getting choked out. If she could have held on a little bit longer or done something else, could she have maybe made it to the bell?
I don't know. I think it would have been too far away because she got the choke. She got the finish with 1:30 left on the clock.
1:30,
That's
1:30
a
left on the
long time.
But at that one point, Tate was up there high. I'm wondering if she could have just tried again, but she had it sunk in. And again, I'm far from, being the expert of getting out of these chokeholds. But it looked like she was up higher instead of just rolling. If she could have, I've seen people do a little jerk thing and have the other person kind of slide, depending on the sweat of the combatants and things like that. I'm just saying, throwing it out there that if she could have, and again, Tate did what she had to do by, being the bulldog that she is. And look, she did do or die. I think what did Nate Diaz say? It's I'm here to kill or be killed, and that's what she did in that 5th and final round. Hey, if I'm going down, I'm telling you now, I'm going down with every last ditch effort of making.
Yeah, that was it. Now, what's next for these two? That's the obvious next question. Now we've had a couple of days to soak this all in. For Holm, what's next? Because it's not a fight with Tate, apparently.
Yeah, Holm, I think you go with what,
Amanda Nunes? Kat Zingano?
That's who I'm thinking. I was trying to think of Nunes, but again, it's going to be interesting because you do kind of open up that if you want Nunes to do you make that a title eliminator? Do you make Holm Kat Zingano a title eliminator? We haven't
seen for a while.
I think you kind of go with Nunes just for the fact that if Ronda Rousey wins and Nunes wins, you kind of have a new little bit
fresh
of
matchup.
a new fresh matchup there. And then if Holm wins, she kind of solidifies that, hey, she deserves a fight. And you still have the thing whereas, hey, she's the one that's beat Ronda Rousey. So you got a lot to work with there. So I think that's the safest route. But again, you watch what UFC is doing lately and not necessarily doing these safe routes.
I think the best opportunity, I think you're right. I think Holly Holm fighting Amanda Nunes, who I think would take this fight in a heartbeat because, number one, she wasn't that impressive against Valentina Shevchenko. She needs that signature win before she can legitimately challenge, I think, for the bantamweight title. I think fighting Holly Holm, who wants to fight immediately, who wants to keep fighting and then get this loss off her resume, get back in people's mind. If she goes out and beats Nunes, it's like, okay, she's ready for Tate Rousey. And if Rousey beats Tate again for the third time, you have Rousey Holm completely set up. If Misha beats Rousey, I don't know what the hell happens, but
I mean, but at least you got the Holm Tate, I guess, rematch, and you go and say, hey, she ended her fight. You know, she made her look like a one-hit wonder, and you can go that route. I think, I just think that's the best way to go, because I think if you throw, I don't know, man, it's so hard, man. I'm glad I'm not a matchmaker right now in UFC, because ultimately, though, I don't know if there's a bad fight that you could really make, but to sit there and I kind of. Yeah, and I think the problem I have is I look at it like wrestling, because, I wrestled for so long, and I'm trying to like, okay, which one's going to put butts in the seats? What's the best way to where I can tell a story to get to a final matchup that I would like to see? And the problem with MMA and UFC and everything else is I don't know what the outcome of that story, the first part of the story, is going to be to go to the second part of the story.
We don't know the next chapter.
So I can't write this out.
We don't have creative in a room putting our road to the UFC 200 together. We don't know what's going to happen. That's what makes this sport so crazy and unpredictable, and why we love it. Because
and the fact that you see this unpredictability unfold in front of you every week. It's
absolutely crazy. And I think if Misha Tate beats Rousey, do we ever see her fight again? That's another question. Like, I mean, if she wants to avenge the home,
I don't think so.
That's the bigger thing. If Rousey loses to Tate, then it's like, oh my God! Is there a reason for her to fight again after losing? Like, she doesn't get the belt back. She loses to somebody she's already beaten twice. Can she beat Holm? Does she feel like she can beat Holm? Like a whole bunch.
And at that point, would she want to? I mean, I guess
what's the win? Where does she win?
The fight and maybe how it ends.
Where does she win? Is basically the way these fighters should look at this. It's like when you put working in the business that we work. Like if we're covering a story, or like if we want to draw attention to a story, like as cynical as this sounds, but where do you win with the story? Can you make yourself come out better, or more accepted, or more intelligent, or more publicized, or more whatever? Where do you win with the story? Where does Ronda Rousey win if she loses to Misha Tate and then still fights Holly Holm? Like, in her mind, it's closure at home, but she lost to somebody who she's beaten twice already. And does she feel like she hasn't anymore? So there's a lot of stuff. But all of a sudden, bantamweight just came a little deeper by going threefold. And Nunes, we don't know. Juliana Pena, we don't know after the bar fight incident. And Kat Zingano, who hasn't fought in like a year, all of a sudden is back on the radar. So we'll see. Because then you further go down the line, you got Shevchenko, who looked okay. Like, she looks promising as someone that could eventually grow into the sport. You see Betch Correia, who has beaten Ronda Rousey's friends, and that's about it. And then Jessica Ai, who was supposed to be somebody to look more forward to, but Tate took care of that on the UFC on Fox card in July. So a lot of moving parts in the women's bantamweight division, and of course in the three divisions that we mentioned regarding Diaz and Conor McGregor. We got a lot of more stuff. It's going to be a longer than normal episode, which keeps happening because we keep having more stuff to talk about, John. So we're going to take a quick break. We come back. We got to go over the UFC Unstoppable press conference, which gave us some great matchups. A nod to one of the greatest professional wrestling staples of all time out of nowhere from John Jones. Paige Van Zandt is on Dancing with the Stars with Von Miller and Antonio Brown and Doug. Like this is a huge get for the UFC publicity wise, but this kind of happened out of nowhere. And we got a couple more things that we got to talk about when we come back on the Full Mount official podcast, TFM Live.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to thefullmountmma.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Brian Coyle and Sean Stanley.
Welcome back, everybody, to TFM Live, the official podcast of thefullmountmma.com. You can follow us on Twitter at The Full Mount. I am Brian Coyle at BCoyle11 on Twitter. I'm joined by Sean Stanley at SS Sports Talk on Twitter. And Sean, the UFC did a whole huge press conference similar to their Go Big press conference that was taken over by Conor McGregor and Red Panty Night and yelling at Cowboy Cerrone and RDA and basically taking on the entire UFC. This time around, no McGregor. Just every single big matchup every single headliner that's going to match up. Though Joanna Jacek and Claudia Gadelha almost came to blows during the presser, which, man, like, they should get a lot more attention. I know they're going to be on Ultimate Fighter, but that is a great rivalry. I can't wait to see them fight.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the Ultimate Fighter and how they build that up. And
Joanna yelling Kaya LaBoca and at Gadelha, and that's going to be a hell of a fight. And it's just one of many fights the UFC announced officially. So let's go down the list here. This is basically your headline schedules, your headliners through until UFC 200, which obviously has nothing announced on it yet. Mark Hunt and Frank Mir next Saturday from Brisbane. That's a Fox Sports 1 card.
That's one of those fun fights that you see two heavyweights go at it, and again, the heavyweight division's kind of, I don't want to say wide open, but anybody could probably jump in there with a couple nice victories and could probably put themselves in title contention.
Anytime Mark Hunt is fighting, I make it a appointment viewing because, man, he can throw. More heavyweights: Junior Dos Santos, Big Ben Rothwell, Zagreb, Croatia, April 10th. Rothwell claiming another big heavyweight scalp here in Dos Santos would be huge towards his opportunity at a heavyweight belt. And that's a great headline for the UFC's first trip out to Croatia, which, I mean, they're expanding all over the globe, especially internationally with these cards. I mean, we'll talk about Overeem and Arlovsky in a second, but those are big fighters to carry on a Fox Sports 1 card internationally, so that should be exciting. What are your thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, Rothwell looks like he's going to have another, you can put another feather in his cap there, but man, Croatia, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long way to go to climb the ladder of the heavyweight division. Sunday
at 2 p.m. Eastern.
I think that's why they're doing these crazy places, just because they can get the early start times.
Yeah, it's like watching a football game.
That is.
It's like when you had the Bisping Silva card, and they fought at like 6:30, and it was great.
Yeah, better than 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, for sure. My personal favorite, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Tony, and I'm giving him this nickname, and it's sticking, Battle Droid Ferguson, because the dude, he's so fun to watch. El Kukui, like I can't wait for that one. That's in Tampa, April 16th.
Better than Beast in 25-8.
Oh, I don't know how Corey Anderson finds the time to beast that much. I really don't. Like, congrats to him. By the way, I want to kind of get into this fight card. Nurmagomedov and Ferguson are on Fox. Shogun Rua and Rashad Evans is the co-main event. Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson is the third fight. Rose Namajunas, Tisha Torres is on that card.
Stacked this card.
Beneil Dariush and Michael Chiesa, and Betch Kohei and Raquel Pennington.
Wow,
that's the top 6 fights on that card. And Cub Swanson and Hakran Diaz is on that card too.
Is that because of how bad the last Fox card was, kind of? Or disappointing, I guess. It wasn't bad, but I mean, it was
the Sage North card. It had Ben Rothwell tapping out Josh Barnett.
No, I mean, it had some bright moments, but as far as for the card, though, I don't think it was quite what they thought it was going to be.
I think the UFC's kind of turning it up, because any of these guys, hell, if Khabib or Ferguson wins, you could see them against RDA as like the third title fight on UFC 200, because that's what we're assuming essentially. Is we've got 3 title fights in July on a card.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is we're all assuming that 200 is going to be this big event.
Oh, it's going to be big.
We definitely believe it should be.
Yes.
But is that what UFC's thinking?
Oh, for sure. They're opening up that new Las Vegas arena big time. That's going to be a hell of a card. Regardless, I mean, GSP and Lawler is that dream headliner for me. That's what I think. And I mean, John Jones, Rumble Johnson, John Jones, Cormier. If somehow Cormier beats Jones, which I mean, all respect to DC. It's going to be tough to beat Bones, and let's segues perfectly into UFC 197, Saturday, April 23rd. Cormier, Jones, Mighty Mouse, and Henry Cejudo would be the co-main event with Anthony Pettis and Edson Barbosa in a kicking matchup for the ages. Man, that's going to be fun. Robert Whittaker is also on the card against Rafael Natal. And Whittaker, he's a name to watch. In that middleweight division, young New Zealander. We saw him at UFC 193 with a good win. Let's see if he continues on that. So, I mean, we'll get into Jones and Cormier more in depth, obviously, as it gets closer. But John Jones doing the DX crotch chop to Cormier as he was walking up the stage. It's amazing the cheering that Jones got and the incessant boos that Cormier was hit with during that presser. And, I mean, when you think about what's happened recently, people shouldn't exactly be cheering for John Jones. But as I saw, I think it was one of the MMA writers from Bleacher Report, Cormier has all the charisma of a elementary school hall monitor.
That's the thing. He doesn't have anything that people want to cheer for. So he ultimately becomes the guy you boo for.
He's the heel in this scenario. Jones is the rogue babyface at this point.
Yeah, and Jones don't even have to work hard to be the babyface.
No, not at all. And Jones, I mean, he is 21-1, but again, that one loss is from disqualification. So Jones is undefeated, trying to reclaim the title that he never lost in the octagon, was only stripped of. As I mentioned previously, Alistair Overeem, Andrei Arlovsky, teammates from Jackson Wink, are fighting the main event over in the Netherlands. Overeem re-signing with the UFC gets Arlovsky, and Arlovsky's, if he goes down to Overeem, like this is kind of a fall, like after he completely missed his opportunity against Frank Mir, where like that was an ugly fight. He gets knocked out viciously by Stipe Miocic, who we'll talk about in just a second. And now he gets Overeem. And if he gets knocked out by Overeem, Arlovsky's was so close to getting up to that top and is tumbling down again. Antonio Bigfoot Silva and Stefan Struve are also on that card as well. The next one up in May would be UFC 198. Fabricio Verdum and Stipe Miocic headline a card in Curitiba, Brazil, in a soccer stadium. So, Vai Cavallo and Miocic finally fight after having that fight canceled because of Velasquez's injury, and then Miocic fills in, and Verdum pulls out. And so now we'll finally get that one. It's an interesting contrast of styles, and Verdum can cement his legacy pretty much as one of the top heavyweights of all time, Sean.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, again, there's so many intriguing matchups coming up with the UFC, and we said, like, it's just they have. I would love to be the matchmaker, and at the same time would hate to be the matchmaker because you have so much to choose from. And so many ways to go, but at the same time, there's so much talent right now in UFC. It's
Sean Shelby and Joe Silva did a great job.
It's very interesting to see. I mean, with these fights, and then definitely. And then as you start getting the results from these cards, and you start seeing, okay, this guy beat this guy, and this guy won on this card, and now you start looking at matchups down the line. I mean, this is nonstop.
For sure. Look, in the undercard, Damian Maia and Matt Brown, this slugfest fight of the night. Oh, yeah, Jacare and Belfort are the co-main event.
Yeah, look at that. They just throw them on the card.
Yeah, throw the Gator and Belfort on that. And man, that's my fight that I pick. And then UFC 199, June 4th from the Forum in Los Angeles. Has anything happened at the Forum since the Lakers left? Like that.
Kobe's last game. Ain't that where Kobe's last game will be?
No,
the Staples Center. I'm sorry.
This is the Forum.
Right. Oh man, oh my God, I wasn't even thinking. I'm so used to the Forum being the Lakers, I didn't even think about it.
I don't know what goes on at the Forum anymore in Inglewood.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this a joke?
No, this is a big freaking deal. And it's gonna have a big freaking main event and a big freaking main co-event. Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman will headline that card from LA. Rockhold with a little bit of a home turf advantage as the East Coast guy. Weidman comes out to try to regain his title. And this was the title fight that we had talked about. We didn't know it was going to happen in bantamweight. But Dominic Cruz will fight Uriah Faber to close the trilogy, dating all the way back. So Cruz Faber, and it's like Cruz was in rare form during that presser, saying, "Now I have to fight T.J. Dillashaw's grandpa."
Yeah.
That was the line of the night for me. Faber,
mine was with Weidman when he said, "You and Cormier will just hand the titles over to me, and me and John Jones will take care of the titles on the night." It was funny.
Yeah,
they were going back and forth,
and Cormier was freaking out. Like, why is Weidman taking shots at me?
He's like, what?
He's just throwing him in the crossfires.
It's just great, man. It's just great.
It was great. Like, they did a great job with that. And I know it's a weird kind of setup, and there's a lot of fighters. And I know Cormier and Jones obviously taking center stage with Joanna and Claudia right behind them. But Faber getting a title shot, does he deserve it? Probably not.
And it's just kind of like the last hurrah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, hey, all right, let's throw him in there.
Henan Barao
and
can't
what
fight.
happens if he wins?
Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't that kind of mix up things, though?
Then Dillashaw. That's the answer there. TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But again, it's almost like no matter who wins or loses in these fights, I don't think the matchmakers can mess up whatever they put in there or whatever they do. I mean, it's just everything kind of answers itself in these fights.
Yeah, and my argument for the bantamweight was to fight Mighty Mouse and Cruz, and do a super fight to make them both more. I mean, a little bit more visible as divisions rather than the fighters themselves. But if Mighty Mouse gets by Cejudo and Cruz beats Faber, then I think we've got a better argument for that. Excuse me, at that point, but it'll be fun. Like, all these are really fun fights, and we don't know what UFC 200 holds. Possibly it holds GSP, which pretty awesome. It's a good time to be a fan of the UFC. The promotion's never been hotter.
Yeah.
And we've got all these awesome cards, and like sometimes you look at a card like, oh yeah, that's cool. And it's not, we didn't even mention the Ottawa card that's not even on the website. That is Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson against Rory McDonald, who having McDonald back in the welterweight division creates so many dream matchups. So, like, it's a good time right now. I mean, their biggest cash cow may have lost, but they got plenty of people coming up right behind.
Yep.
And Conor,
and plus it opened up more intriguing matchups.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm very excited. And Paige Van Zant's on Dancing with the Stars.
Adios mío.
Now, she is the first ever UFC fighter to do it while active. Of course, Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell were on Dancing with the Stars.
But I mean, is she really active right now? I mean, she got beat and she hasn't been back since.
She got beat by Rose Namajunas, who looked really good during that fight, and Paige was outclassed. Yep. And the Sage and Paige push to the top, the superstar push to the top was taken out by the legs. And I would not be surprised if we see Sage Northcutt on UFC 200, by the way, too. Just as an undercard fight. Probably the Fight Pass prelims.
Main event.
That sounds about right. But Van Zant who obviously some people have taken shots at her because she's gotten this push by the UFC. And is she that good? We don't know. She was easily, I mean, she showed off her toughness, obviously, against Rose, lasting all the way to the 5th round. But is she a top 10 strawweight? Yeah. Is strawweight deep? No. Is she ready to challenge anybody in the top of that division? No. So, I mean, if this is going to get the UFC more publicity, 13 million people, I looked it up for our article, 13.3 million people watched Dancing with the Stars finale.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely going to be watching it and tuned in, and she's going to get, she's got the look, probably got the moves. I mean, she's going to make a good showing, so why not? I mean, you can have all these people, and then you start getting other audiences tuned in because, again, you got football players on there, you got
Von Miller and Antonio Brown.
Yeah, you
Super Bowl MVP.
Different players on there, different people from different realms. They start seeing, the UFC fighter, and they hear it over and over every week. And then you start getting that audience to like, let me check this UFC thing out. And that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great job of the UFC now. And we'll see, I mean, where Paige goes as a fighter after this, because that's the most important thing. But for now, I mean, if that's the way they're utilizing her, and she wants to do that, and she has an incredible dancing background. Before she started mixed martial arts, she was a dancer, ballet dancer, jazz, all that kinds of stuff. So, and then Conor, of course, I wanted to mention this: the first ever disclosed $1 million payout for a UFC fighter, which is good. I want to see more big money for these fighters because working as independent contractors, number one, and the UFC Reebok payouts, number two, it's not as lucrative. And we see boxers make this hand over fist money, and the UFC is doing just fine as a promotion. And remember, Dana White and the Fertittas took this from a $2 million buy to a $1 billion company. So they are very healthy right now when it comes to this sort of thing. So I hope to see higher paydays. Like Holm got $500,000 disclosed. Diaz got $500,000. Miesha Tate got 46 to show, and then 46 for the win. So like I'd like to see a more normalized date of salary.
That's kind of crazy.
A little bit, right? And so
at least for the title fight, I mean 46 in the show. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but now Tate
that's
probably should expect the Holly Holm number for her fight against Ronda Rousey whenever it is. And of course, Tate's already building that fight, saying that Rousey might be a broken woman and will never come back the same way.
Yeah, she wants to produce babies more than fighting.
That was the quote. It's starting early. It's starting early.
Yeah, no, you knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's just, you got to get that out there. I have one question for you, too, because I was watching the Fight Pass main events because of me. I have Fight Pass for some reason. I'm not sure why yet, but I have it.
You haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah, I haven't figured it out yet, but I still
We talked about this on Twitter. What is your question?
Diego Sanchez and Jim Miller were the main event.
Nightmare, baby. He's back.
Fight Pass, man. They didn't get the Fox Sports 1.
Well, this is how you get people to watch Fight Pass. You put fighters that heavy UFC
But this is
fans.
my thing. If you have fight, and go ahead. I know you're going to say your point, so say your point first.
Yeah, and you want to draw in more subscribers to Fight Pass, so you put names that people, the casual MMA fan who probably doesn't spend however much Fight Pass costs, like every month, to do it. But they're like, hey, Anderson Silva and Michael Bisping are fighting I can only see it this way. Oh, yeah, sure. I'll subscribe for the month. And I'll get access to all this library of content. Obviously, it's not as good as, say, if you were a big wrestling fan and you wanted to watch WrestleMania the day after. You can't watch UFC 196 the day after it happens and then get complete access to those fights over and over again. You can't rewatch them until, it's put on Fight Pass. But it's a way to draw the casual, having two stalwart veterans that are known is a way to kind of draw people, new subscribers, because they know they have, like, a hardcore MMA fan will have Fight Pass. But they want to kind of find the person in between the hardcore and casual, or the casual, to draw in new subscribers.
Yeah, but my argument is this. Most people that get the Fight Pass are not your casual fans anyways.
Yes, that's true. But they want more. The subscriber number is never good enough, Sean. It's never good. Like,
no,
you can always have
that.
more.
I mean,
like,
yeah, I know that, but to me, I mean, you're putting these guys on here on these fights, and I mean, look, the Fight Pass, that crowd, I mean, there might have been, it was almost as bad as an independent wrestling show.
Oh, yeah, because it was so early.
Yeah, and you got these guys out there fighting them, and then, like, I don't know if I've never paid attention to the Fight Pass thing, but there's so many lulls in between the fights.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's like 15, 20 minutes between the one fight because it ends so quickly to when that Diaz and Jim Miller are supposed to come out. There was like a 20-minute, like, they've replayed the same commercial 75 times.
Yeah. I mean, but again, let's not cry too much because Jim Miller got $59,000 and Sanchez with a $75,000 win bonus got $150,000. So they're getting money.
Oh, they made more than Tate, huh?
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're getting money to fight on Fight Pass. The exposure that they might not get by fighting on was being compensated.
All right, now I don't feel so bad. All
yeah.
Right. Thanks.
No, that's what we're here for. Also, I wanted to mention the two crazy knockouts, Vitor Miranda and Nordine Taleb, who delivered some thunderous KOs on the Fox Sports 1 card. And also Ilir Latifi doing his best Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar impression by throwing Jean Vellante all over the octagon.
He did the Kevin Owens to Adrian Neville.
It was pretty nuts. So there were moments. The UFC card had its moments up until the final two fights, but then after
the big moments.
Yes, exactly. I thought Tom Lawler maybe got robbed a little bit, but
yeah,
I mean,
but that's why you don't leave it to the judges, though. You don't. You gotta finish them fights.
And that's why you beast more than 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For Corey Anderson.
That helps. Although I did argue the 30-27.
Yes.
There's no way anybody
that was
have
insane.
a 30-27 on that fight.
That is why you never leave it in the hands of the judges.
And then there was another fight, the fight before that one, I think. They had the guy winning 2 10-8 rounds on one of them. It was 30-26.
I like it gets shaky for me at a certain point. Like, you see the judges, like, they all rightly scored, like, if they would have had to score the fight for Tate, that second round 10-8, but I mean, they say it now. Would they really, like, it's a little fishy, but
yeah, I don't understand all that judging stuff, man. I don't know what they watch or what they're looking at, or I don't know.
Yeah, but hey, the most positive thing out of this, neither you or I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but I'm saying it anyway, will end up getting a 209 tattoo after Nate Diaz winning. That befell the fate of UFC commentator John Anik, who apparently...
I wasn't out.
Sean, did I lose you?
Oh, no, I'm here. I thought I was supposed to get the 209 tattoo, though. I haven't.
Oh, you haven't?
We weren't supposed to do that? I thought we were doing that.
No.
Yeah.
That was the other... You don't have to... I mean... It's not a bad tattoo to have. 209 represent, but...
Oh, my goodness. Oh, now I feel so bad. All right, we'll try to get it covered up.
I mean, next time you see the Diaz brothers, you can be like, hey, I never threw you under the bus.
There we go. Revving to 209.
Yeah, good for them. I mean, but I just want to end the note on the medical suspension for Nate Diaz. It expires April 20th. I'll leave it at that. It's oddly fitting for Nate Diaz. We want to thank you guys for listening.
It can't get no better than that.
to the latest edition of TFM Live, the official podcast of FullMountMMA.com. I am Brian Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at bcoyle11, tweeting about mostly MMA stuff, but then, I'm a Knicks fan. It's hell, again, the usual. Lots of football stuff. And I tweet about stuff I do at my other job as well. Sean at SS Sports Talk. You're covering literally everything. Like, anytime I see news break on Twitter, you're usually on top of it. And I do that for... Yes, for a whole bunch of things. At the Full Mount on Twitter for all of the MMA updates from our site, thefullmountmma.com, as well for anything you need there. Sean, you got anything else?
I do not, sir. Thank you for great podcast here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I did record my side. I remembered to do that, unlike those lost podcasts from...
Oh, you're going to hate me after this one, then. But the podcast will be out soon.
All right. So thank you guys for listening each and every week. We'll be back next week on TFM Live, the official podcast of the Full Mount MMA.com. We're out.
The TFM Live podcast is brought to you by the Full Mount MMA.com. Check us out on Twitter at the Full Mount.